So thank you all for coming. My name is Kathy Terrell. I've been a master gardener for 23 years. Somebody counted that the other day. I was working yesterday at the Lake County Fairgrounds. We have our we call it it's called a peace garden, but it's a trial garden. If you haven't been out there, just take a look, because just to see how things are planted, how things grow. It's the second time we had to grow the garden since I've been a master gardener, because the fair board, we're in front of like the at the far end where usually they have the flea markets and things, on Menor Ave there, but the fair board tore down the old building several years ago, along with most of our garden, which was in front of the building. So that garden had to be kind of replaced. We saved what we could and we worked from there. But so it's been a long time. I actually did have a shady yard until the tornadoes came through my yard 2 years ago, big time. And again, this year, one more time. Keep knocking those trees down. My husband's joking that we're going to go to the desert look in our garden now instead of the wooded lot. But that's where I'm coming from right now. I'm restoring my garden. So I'm moving stuff from the sunnier side of my yard to the shadier, or from the sunnier side to what used to be the shady side, which is now also the sunnier side. But so with that, we're going to start this presentation about getting our gardens ready for fall. We're definitely in fall, and into winter. And I've got a new device. I'm going to try this one here. So today's program is brought to you by Ohio State University Extension. We're made up of 4 components. And the last component is where agriculture and natural resources is where the master gardeners line up. And this is the Ohio line. I do have a resource slide at the end of the presentation. So if you want to get a copy of all these websites that I'm referring to, it'll be there for you. But our research is, or our programs are research based. Yeah, there's some things that, grandma or mom or somebody has taught us different things, and that's okay. But the research kind of proves the point. Is it a good idea or a bad idea? And so that's where Ohio State Extension comes in with the Master Gardeners. And we are located here in Lake County, down in downtown Painesville. This is our phone number and our contact information. And you can call there right now. We have a hotline, so you can call if you have a gardening related question on Tuesday mornings from April through October. And you can speak with a master gardener between 9 and 11, basically. So in the fall and winter, we don't run that hotline, but right now people are calling. And I also field questions for the state through e-extension, which is through Columbus. So there's a lot of information here, a wealth of information. But today we're going to be talking about fall gardening. And it did arrive not with a bang, but we all noticed that it did come on the 22nd. And then the Monday after, it definitely felt like fall. So, and going through the calendar year, we were talking about climate change a little bit before a lot of people got here, how our climate is changing. We're getting longer periods of warm, and then we followed up with the cold period, and then we get another longer period of warm. That's kind of how we've noticed at Ohio State, how our climate is changing here in Ohio. So the things that might have died to the ground by now are still living. I've cut things down and had them regreening, big leaves and things like that. So even though fall has arrived and there are some notable changes, it's just a really good time to be in our gardens and our yards. Like I said, on the way out, I saw a whole row of red maple trees. It's beautiful. I mean, it's just the beginning. I know we get our fall color here first, and then it goes, well, I kind of disagree. They say we get it here first, but then it goes further south later. But I've been in mid-Ohio when I think the color is spectacular there, and it's kind of here. So, but this is the time of year that sometimes people plant things for fall, like all the grasses that are blooming now. When you see those grasses, you're like, I want that. So it's a time of year to think about inspiration in your garden, and what to do to get your garden ready for the next step, which is the winter that we anticipate coming right around the corner here. But we have had a different way of thinking, like I've said. Used to be, you go out there and you trim everything down. It'd be like you have to get it all done. It's your quest. You're blowing every leaf out of the beds. You're cutting all the stumps down. But now we're kind of thinking as the fall cleanup is more of an editing job, kind of like a marathon instead of a sprint. So you can go out there and cut down the things that really have been past their prime already. And the reason we're saying to leave some of the stems and leave some of the leaves is because there's a lot of microorganisms in that leaf litter, and the stems create homes for a lot of the insects that need some place to go in the wintertime. So if you go through and you clean up your garden way too fast, or you are just destroying some of their home turf for these beneficial insects that we all need to have around. Plus, it also makes it a little easier on us gardeners. You don't have to go out there in one day and get everything done. Take it a little slow. Take it a little easier. And see what else you can, the way I think about it is like some of my coneflowers have bent over already, and the birds have eaten a lot of them already. So the ones that are bent over or falling into my lawn, I'm taking out. The ones that are standing up straight and still have color on them, they're staying in until they start breaking down themselves. So that's how I edit my garden now, instead of just going out there one day and taking it all down. The reasons that we keep our gardens clean is to try to prevent disease and insects. It does make improving the soil a little easier if you're adding amendments to the soil at this time of year. And it might save a little bit of time in the spring when we're also busy in the gardens. So there are things that you can do now, and we're going to go through some of those too. So your annuals and vegetables, like I was just saying, my community garden tomatoes are just about done. They don't have a compost pile there because it is a community garden. But if you have vegetables that are already done and they're disease-free, you can add them to your compost pile. And it probably is a good thing for even like this tomato. It looks like, have you noticed that as the tomatoes get older, the skin gets harder and tougher? So they're not so good on BLTs, or maybe they're good for cooking with, or making a sauce out of, but so you can easily remove your annuals and your vegetables. Annuals are things that you buy every year in packs and will not come back from the root. Perennials will come back from the root. So, and you don't want to pull those out then. You want those to grow and spread. And usually perennials, the first year, they kind of don't do so much. We say the first year they sleep. The second year they creep. And the third year they leap. Because if you've ever had planted perennials, they take a little time to establish. And then by the third or fourth year, you're giving them away because you're getting so many of them. So, but the annuals and vegetables you can put on your compost pile. And we're talking about first frost, which can be anywhere from October 8th to November 2nd here in this area of the country. So right now, there is no first frost looking at all. I've looked ahead. It's like we might get a few 40-degree nights, not too many. Plus, like I'm close to the lake. I don't know where you live, but if they're closer to the lake, you get that protection in the fall. So I have houseplants out. I'm not moving them in until we start getting consistent 40s at night. A lot of them are setting their buds, like the Christmas cactus, things like that will set buds because of the cold temperatures. So there's no need to hurry to get those in the house. But if you are worried about the frost, definitely get out there but look at the weather. It has changed and we are a little bit warmer now. So you can clean up your perennials. Like I said, we talked about cutting off maybe the heads. See the little goldfinch on that flower, seed head of the coneflower? There's so many good seeds on these seed heads for the birds. And you'll hear them twittering away in your yard. So I leave those things up until I see that the plants themselves are breaking down. And the birds are no longer interested. There's nothing in there. And then it's time to get your feeders out, I guess. It's the second part of that. So when you cut your perennials, plants that are prone to disease like Monarda or flax, they're prone to powdery mildew. You don't want to put that kind of product on your compost pile because you could spread the powdery mildew into the pile. You want to cut down perennials like hostas. And so we had a discussion at the garden yesterday where I was working. Someone else was saying, oh, I wait until they're yellow and then I just pull them out. That means they have to be frosted, they have to be dead. But a lot of us were saying our experience is, well, with the hostas, if they get older and older, they get limp. And then it's harder and harder to cut them. So once again, I kind of err on the side of, and the hostas are not doing anything. They're not feeding birds. They're not doing anything for that time. So I think when you have time, get out and take care of your hostas, whatever that looks like for you. But the leaves do harbor slugs and things. So it's not good for next year's growth just to leave them on the ground. So that's another reason to clean up those perennials. And then another thing, that plants that have blackened or are browning, bare stalks, like I said, I had Joe Pye weed, the big Joe Pye weed that is native here, but it was all brown already. So I just did that this morning and I cut some of the stems. I left stems up good in the garden so animals, insects, not animals, could use those stems to winter over in. But it wasn't adding any interest to my landscape, and it was also blocking some of the other things that were still blooming. Like I have a beautyberry bush, purple berries on it right now. Beautiful. Couldn't see it because the Joe Pye was kind of in front of it. So think about that when you're cutting down your perennials. Plants that provide winter interest are plants you maybe don't want to cut down. I did cut down my Joe Pye weed because it was brown already. But I did leave up my grasses and my sedum. They still look good, and there's still flowers on them and seeds for birds. Once they start breaking down, though, I usually clean up my grasses probably around February, though, because I like to see them blowing in the winter wind. But once they start breaking down, your neighbor won't appreciate having your grasses in their yard. So that's a time to get rid of them. Get out there, and sometimes these grasses can be quite hard. You might have to get your husband with this chainsaw out there to take care of them, let alone trying to divide it and give it a piece to a friend or move it in your yard. Like I said, the birds that are using our coneflowers and black-eyed Susans now, and the larvae and the insects that are hiding in the different stages in our leaf litter. Evergreens and semi-evergreens are now coming into their time of year. Everything else is kind of going by the wayside, but the beautiful evergreens and semi-evergreens are the stars of the winter garden. So we don't want to cut those down, that's for sure. Here's some grasses with snow all around. It's beautiful. And enjoy the winds blowing through there. And the birds sometimes just land on those seed heads too. And you'll see them eating the little seed heads out of there. When you do your final cut, you can cut about, like I cut right now today, my Joe Pye probably up about 5 inches, but it's hiding behind other things. I'm not looking at the bare stalks. But when you're doing your final cuts, like we were doing at the garden at the Lake County Fairgrounds yesterday, because we're only out there one more time and then we're done for garden season out there. You want to cut down pretty low. Yesterday, it almost killed us to cut the beautiful butterfly bush that was bigger than me and had 2 trunks in it that looked like a tree stalk all the way down. We cut it all the way to the ground. Usually does provide better growth patterns in the spring though, and you get usually a stronger plant. So don't be, too afraid to cut these plants down, especially things that grow in one season like the butterfly bush. Use the bypass pruners for clean cuts. You can use, if you're trimming boxwoods, I always recommend I usually don't trim boxwoods till I need some for Christmas decorations. And then I'm going to use clean cuts on every bush. I try not to, because there is disease that you could spread from bush to bush. So with every trim that I cut into that bush, that boxwood, I would use the same clippers. But if I go to the next boxwood, I'm cleaning my clippers again. So use good sharp tools. Hedge trimmers are great for large plantings. And here's what I was talking about. If you have house plants, that we don't want to leave them out when the temperatures get too cold at night. So that's another thing. Move any potted or hanging plants that you want to keep indoors. Maybe there's a special plant somebody bought for you this season. I always try to keep my rosemary going. Some years I only made it one. Last year my rosemary made it to this spring. Usually they don't like it in the house, so I make it last through December. Then I use my rosemary on my potatoes, and then it's usually gone because it's not going to be too healthy. But if there's any special plants, watch those nighttime temperatures. You want to get them in your house, and maybe somebody bought you just a little begonia, something like that. They're not hardy, they will die back. But if you want to bring it inside, nothing says you can't. Treat it for insects first so you're not bringing the bugs in, but definitely get it out of there before the first frost. Other things we want to think about in the winter as we get ready for winter: clean and store your planters that you won't be using again until spring. Discard the soil. I usually put my soil in my close garden, which is an herb garden now. I don't tend to save it. Some people do different things with it, but we don't really recommend saving it, especially if your pots are staying outside. Even plastic pots will harbor things and will get in that soil over winter. Now, all of these porous pots, I wouldn't recommend keeping them outside. Clean them up with 9 parts water, 1 part bleach, let them dry, and then put them away somewhere under cover, a shed, your basement, whatever, just so that it's not getting the rain and the freeze that will break these pots apart. Okay, composting is a whole subject in and of itself, but basically we said you could put dead and dying plants, top of frost killed bulbs, and you could put leaves that you have mulched with your mower. Don't put leaves whole in your compost pile, because it's going to take a long time to break down those leaves. So you want to run the mower through the leaves and then put them in your compost pile. You could put your potted annual plants once you're emptying them out in there. They create a good base for your compost. And a little bit about compost chemistry. And you could have a whole subject just devoted to composting. But with that being said, the general ratio is 50-50. Carbon, which is all of your things that are the brown things are autumn leaves, straw, wood chips, bark, paper. Those are your high carbon numbers. Your nitrogen numbers are your green things. Plant scraps, manure, grass clippings, coffee grounds are even considered green things because we just used up the grounds and used up the coffee in the house. But so in general, you're trying to keep your ratio at your pile 50-50, just 50-50. I would not worry about it. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could go, but if you could just think, don't overload the system with, you get a whole lot of autumn leaves, especially oak leaves. They're not so good in your compost pile. Keep the percentages low of the oak, and then have all the other brown materials at a 50-50 to your green materials. So, I mean, like I said, there's a lot more information about composting. If you need further help, websites, online libraries are a great thing. But when you are done with your composting for the year, and next year, after you turn the pile, you do have to turn the pile, aerate it, and if we have a dry winter, you're probably going to have to keep it moist at some point. You usually have to, in the summer, if we've had droughts this summer, we've had to water those compost piles a bit to get the microbes going. But it's the best thing we can do for our soils is to take this compost that we have taken out of the scraps of our yard and put it back around our plants for next growing season. It has valuable nutrients and microbes in there that we just can't buy. So everybody should try to start, or even a little tabletop. Some people live in the city and they just do a bin out in their yard. You don't have to have a big area. So is it a good time to prune? Well, we're talking about certain things to prune. You don't want to prune certain things until later winter, because what does pruning do? Pruning encourages new growth. Do we really want to encourage new growth on the plants right now? The answer is no. because we are anticipating cold temperatures. And that new growth, which is soft, will be damaged by the cold temperatures. So pruning, I do go out and prune my hemlock and my boxwood, but not until after Thanksgiving. Like I said, when I'm using them, when it's cold out already, when I'm using those greens for arrangements and swags, things like that. Also, people sometimes ask about hydrangea pruning. Well, that's a whole nother art and a whole nother program too. But in general, a lot of the old hydrangeas, the mop-headed hydrangeas, bloom on new wood. So the best time to prune them in general is right after they're done blooming. Now the Tavardia, the pointy ones, so to speak, you can harvest those now, use them for dried arrangements throughout your house all winter long. You're not affecting the growth pattern of the boxwood or of the hydrangea. But some people don't seem to get the hydrangeas to rebloom because they're pruning at the wrong time of year. So you have to know what kind of hydrangea you have. You might have to do a little research, take a picture, you can find out online even, and then know the best time to prune it. Okay, so to prevent winter damage, if you have, well, we had a drought. We picked up some rain. I know we're still not where we should be with our drought monitor. We're still, I think, in the Cleveland area down like 7 inches. So, so if you're planting anything now, which is a good time to plant, fall is a good time because the days are generally cooler, the sun angle is lower, so it's not so intense on our newly planted plants. Make sure that you're keeping whatever you transplanted watered, because we don't think about that so much, but they do have to stay watered or you will lose them. About 1 inch a week until the ground freezes, and then you're done. Anti-desiccants are just simple sprays that you can spray on things. Like some people spray things that are near the road, the curbs that get salted, or a lot of traffic or wind. So that anti-desiccants just help the plant maintain its moisture level. And then you can put up shields and shelters. I have some new lavender, which I never had before, that I'm not sure how that's going to go. Like I said, I'm going from shady to sunny, so I have a couple spots with lavender. It does like well-drained soils. It doesn't want to have its feet wet, but it might need some break from, the prevailing northwestern winds. So if you have special plants, I'm not saying to block your whole row out, but some people do block their whole row out, like this one on the top and the bottom, actually. The burlap windscreens. I might just do a little windscreen around my lavender plant just to see if it's going to make a difference or not, because they are new to me. But it does help you protect your investment, because none of this stuff is very cheap when we're buying new plant material or trees or shrubs. It is a good time to plant. Sales are going on. I know last year after the tornado hit us bad, I did go out and buy 6 maple trees at Gales. They had them 50% off. I lost like 20 huge trees. So it was a drop in the bucket, yes, but it made me feel better. And the ground was workable where I could plant, because even though we had stumps were huge. So you can only still plant where you can plant. But the plants will have a good time to get established right now. Always dig your hole twice the size. It doesn't have to be twice as deep, but you want it to be twice the size because those roots will spread out to the side. And you'll see that it's caught. I've already planted a few things that I can tell have caught already. You can just tell that I'm not watering it all the time. Or, I was watering for 2 weeks of the drought, the sun temperatures and the drought. Just shows getting the plant out of the pot. Maybe you need a friend. Sometimes these plants can be big, but the deals are out there to be had. A question sometimes arises, should you see those roots that are all around? Yeah, you can ruffle those up. You don't have to, plant it just per the pot. I always suggest even on balled and burlap plants, the garden centers will say you can plant it all. Plant the wire, plant the basket. But I just don't like to do that. I like to take the burlap, at least take the basket off. Number one, the wire basket. It kind of contains the roots a little bit. Take as much burlap off as you can, because it isn't helping the plant. The roots have to move laterally across and that extra burlap is not letting them, it's preventing them from growing a little bit. So, and do as good as you can with spreading these roots out a little bit. You don't have to be perfect. You can just take a hand rake and, score down the sides or something like that. And that should be enough to stimulate growth in the roots. It's a good time to divide perennials. I would always recommend to dig up the whole plant. It's hard to just, I only want a piece, but it's really easier. Dig up, especially perennials after, like I said, 3 or 4 years. Some perennials get really woody in the middle. So if you only dig up a part of it, you're still keeping that woody part that's not going to be growing again. So dig up the whole plant, get rid of the woody parts. You probably could divide them into 3 to 5, depends how big your perennials are, different plants. You could put back the best one or the biggest one, whichever you like. Put the rest of them somewhere else in your yard, give them to your friends, neighbors, and make sure that they are watered till they are established. Just another picture showing that sometimes we do have to get in with our these big knives, garden knives, or a spade and a pitchfork and pull these plants apart because their roots are so intertwined. But you know what? The best thing you can do for these plants is to divide them up. Plants want to live, and you're not going to hurt them. So it's a good time to do that. Some of the tips that were listed here were like to choose the right day. But I'm not a proponent. I mean, what is the right day? A day like today would be a good day. It's cloudy, it's coolish. But that's not always the time we have available to do our gardening chores. So if you're doing it on a sunny, windy day, just make sure the plant is moist. Keep it moist. You can even lay a brown paper bag over it to prevent the sun from really wilting the plant as it adapts to its new environment. And then it will promote young, active growth. And you'll see that before they actually take their rest for winter. And you can mulch around the plant too. Always be careful with mulch. Do not mulch up to the plant. Just make a crown like around the plant. Because if you go right up to trees, to perennial, whatever, it creates an area, a vector for disease to get into the plants. So do not mulch all the way to the crowns or the bark of trees of the plants. But you can mulch now. It's not a problem to do that. To dig and store the summer bulbs. I have done this yesterday a little bit by calla lilies and canna lilies, 2 different things, but we're going crazy this year. I think so much more sun than they've been used to. And they were literally pushing out of the soil, the tubers. So it's time to do that when, any good day. And I have a couple of the canna lilies still in containers that still have red flowers on them. I saw a butterfly today. I have not seen hummingbirds in the last couple of days, 3 or 4 days. So, yeah, I know people were in Cleveland at Windy Park where they migrate across Lake Erie, from Lake Erie, and they rest there. So last week was a big time to go watch the butterflies there on the trees and things. So, but now is a good time to store these tubers that you want to keep for next year because not all of them are hardy. Dahlias, however, you can cut off the top once they're done blooming, but you want to let the rest of the plant die back with the frost. Basically, sort of like daffodils, you don't want to cut off the greens. All that green on the dahlias is giving the tubers strength to grow. So after the frost, you can dig the tubers. You can cut them down now to clean them up a little bit. But it's a good time to store the summer bulbs. And how do I store them? I just stick them in a brown bag. And my basement is not cold, but I put them in the window well in a brown bag, and I've had good luck with that. With that being said, I do know I used to go past a fire station in Menor where I live, and they had a whole wall of canna lilies. Those guys didn't dig them every year. They don't have time, but it was a heat sink. It was a little microclimate, which you might have in some of our yards. I've had a canna come back up against the foundation of my house. That's exactly what happened at the fire station. It was a south-facing brick wall, and these canna lilies just came back every year for the firemen. So, but most of us aren't that lucky, so we're going to have to dig ours and store the summer bulbs in a cool, dry place. It's also a good time to rake the leaves off of the lawn. Some leaves are okay, they're not going to hurt your lawn, but if they get too much concentration of leaves, it can kill your grass. And we all know this. Even now, my husband seeded our lawn in a couple spots. We had bad areas, and some leaves are falling, and I'm out there going, and the acorns are falling in there. And so I'm pushing things around just to keep that new grass pristine, so the leaves aren't on it. And I mean, even animals will come in there and dig for things. So skunks, chipmunks are really active right now, getting ready for winter. So if you can rake up your leaves rather than, I mean, some people don't have that option. If you have a huge yard, you're blowing your leaves around. But if you can leave some leaves somewhere, not big piles, but just like under certain trees, or it is better for the for all of our creatures that we cohabitate with here. What about mulch? Well, I said we can mulch now, and mulch does prevent weed growth. It conserves the moisture. It stabilizes the temperature of the soils. It can reduce the heaving of small plants. It adds organic matter, and it might reduce erosion. So you can apply mulch now if you need to. I'm not a big mulch proponent myself. I just have had too many experience where it's blowing out of the bed and we're mowing it up. And when they say mulch, they mean 2 to 2.5 inches. We're not like, and you don't have to do that every year. So as long as if you have put down black cloth or something to keep weeds out from underneath your mulch, if you have a lot more mulch than plants, I tend to have a lot more plants. So I don't see too many weeds. I don't need to mulch, etc. But you can mulch now if you are inclined to do so. People are mulching around like newly planted trees and things. And like I said, do not ring up to the tree or the plants with your mulch. Keep some space, at least a couple inches away, so there's no bugs getting into your trees out of the mulch. If you're going to mulch, they do recommend after the ground freezes about 2 inches, and composted or raw manure, peat moss, or shredded leaves. They say after the ground freezes, basically it kind of prevents the heaving. So if you put mulch down now, you are doing a good thing to keep, especially if you keep going through a drought, which I don't think there's any more rain for the next week or so that I've seen. So mulch will help conserve the soil temperatures and moistures. However, like in the spring, if you go out to mulch too early in the spring, what are you doing? You're keeping your soil colder, because the soils do have to take a while to warm up. So, I mean, there might be that graduation party, or you have to get ready by May 15th. But some years, May 15th is not warm enough to put the mulch down. So you have to be conscious of what the temperatures are doing and what your intention is about the mulch. Fall is also a good time to harvest all of your nuts, apples, berries, things that are out there, because if you don't, somebody else will. And I know I've had oak trees dropping nuts like crazy this year, and it's hard to keep up. But and I don't want to be mean to the squirrels, but they are digging in everything then. So they will find a way they'll dig in your lawn, they'll dig in anything that's diggable, their potted plants, etc. So it's best if you can clean them up for disease prevention and also animal, try to keep your animals at bay a little bit. Now it's a time to plant your spring blooming bulbs. Anytime the ground you could do this at any time. If you have bulbs you dug out in the spring, or if you bought some at the garden center, you can put them in as long as the ground is workable, you can put them in. So I just dug some in last week that I had saved from another part of my garden. But it's not too late to do that. Okay, do we want to fertilize or not? Fertilizer helps give us disease-resistant plants. We want to put it around the stems, away from the trunks and stems. And they do say if you are fertilizing now, after the leaf drop, but it could be a while. So you don't want to put fertilizer down now, like we talked about earlier, to encourage new growth. So I would say not until it gets colder if you're intending to fertilize, because the new growth is something we don't want to encourage right now. So we want the plant to stabilize itself and get ready for winter. Okay, this is the kind of a one that I'm not really familiar with, a lot of different roses. So if you know something about roses, speak up, because there's a lot of different ways of thinking about this. Different roses demand different types of care. In general, you can prune up to a third of your rose. If you have a rose that's gone crazy, you can prune about a third of it down. It's not going to hurt anything, or if it's blocking something or getting in your way of even doing your yard work, you can prune it pretty severely. But the rest of your roses, you're probably not going to want to prune so severely now. They used to say to prune them in the fall, but they found out that why not? Why not wait until spring? Because then you'll see what's dead and you could just take it all out at the same time. So, and the best time really to prune them is in the springtime, like in March or April. So with the roses. And if you are putting compost around your roses for winter protection, certain roses demand that, others do not at all. I have miniatures. I don't have a lot of, the Floribunda or the old fashioned or the shrub roses, but they're usually grown to be hardy in our areas that we're planting. So you usually don't have to put anything on them. I believe when people talk about the winter protection or putting leaves around them or mulch or peat moss, I think that's more for the hybridized roses, those big old roses that most of us don't grow anymore because they're too fussy and finicky. Okay, so the lawn always needs our attention because it's the lawn, doesn't it? That's like, and we're mowing now. I mean, we fertilized in it's October now. We fertilized in September, and the lawn's been growing like crazy ever since it started raining. So, and the seeding also. But it's nice to get your lawn ready for winter by doing a late fall fertilizer. Now that has the feed itself has changed over the years. They have taken phosphorus, the middle number N was the nitrogen, P was the phosphorus, and K is the potassium, the last number on those bags that you buy for fertilizers. The phosphorus has been kind of taken out of the fertilizers because it was found to be detrimental and making its way into our waterways and streams and the lake, and creating some of this algae bloom that we didn't really hear about this year, but in past years we've had that algae bloom specifically on the west basin of Lake Erie. So you won't be able to find a high phosphorus fertilizer anymore. So the nitrogen is really the important thing. The nitrogen will keep your lawn green. So if you put one on in September, the last feed should be November, and the high nitrogen number is just fine. You will be cutting your lawn a lot though, right? Because this is the peak time of rain and cool nighttime temperatures where lawns like to grow. So like I said, if you needed to reseed any parts, you should be doing it now or already have done it. Because the other part, like I said, those leaves fall down in it. We want to make sure we get a couple cuts on the newly seeded lawn because that strengthens the roots. So my husband hasn't cut his. I go, they're like your babies. Because they're like getting bushy out there, but he hasn't cut his yet. So maybe this week, end of the week. But it's time to get your lawn ready for winter. Works hard for us all year. Another thing to get ready for winter is our tools. So we want to make sure they're cleaned and maintained, whether you need to sharpen the blades, remove any excess soil or dirt from them, put them in a dry place. Don't forget to run your mower out of gas after you've done your last cut. I know our last cut doesn't usually come some years until December. It's just the season has changed. We used to be November. Now like I said, we're not too far from the lake, so that keeps us a little warmer. But so after your last cut, run the mower out, or you can put some, there's a chemical that you can put in your lawnmower to keep the gunk out of it as it winters over. But the best advice is to run it all out of oil or gas and store it in a good clean spot. Also, to drain your garden hoses, put them away. sharpen your tools, clean your pots, repair. I have a lot of sharpening I need to do this year on cutters too. So it's a good time to like signal which things need help, which things need some attention, and pull them out. Like I'm like, okay, this cutter needs sharpening here. So get them ready for those tool guys. At some of these craft shows, there's always a guy sharpening, or you can do it yourself if you have a stone, and replace them as needed. Because sometimes I know this is hard to believe, but I broke one of those big hori things. I broke it. They're like the saw. They're like a blade this deep, and they have a tooth side and and I mean they're really strong and sturdy, but I broke it. So my husband got me a new one because I do use it a lot. So if you get all those chores done, then you can kind of sit back and enjoy the beauty that's all around you. Feed the birds. There's still some ladybugs on the piece. I don't know. I'm not sure, some kind of pod that is. But take time to sit back and enjoy the beauty once you get all your gardening work done. And don't be in a hurry to do it, because there is a lot to do. And enjoy it, because it's the best time to be in your garden right now. I mean, as the days get cooler and we see the things we want to do, or maybe make plans for next year, or like me, reconstructing a whole new garden where it used to be a forest before. So once we've done all these things, we can just sit back and enjoy Mother Nature and all her beauty. And maybe we will get some snow. I'm not a big snow proponent, but snow does act like a blanket on our plants. So without the snow, we do have other issues. Years we don't have snow cover, you might have dieback of all of your azaleas or your rhododendrons, things like that, because the snow actually shields some of the winter winds from doing damage to these plants. So the snow is not a bad thing. It is a pretty thing. I just don't want to be driving in it, obviously, when you don't have to be. But it is a good time to enjoy all the fruits of your labor. And remember, I did a talk about a week ago or 2 weeks ago here on plants for winter interest. Make sure you've got something out there to look at, because winter is a long season. So whether you're feeding the birds or you've got some nice evergreen trees or pines, make sure you get your bed ready, your garden ready for fall, and then you can enjoy the winter. And here's a couple of those websites. If anybody needs them, you can take a screenshot or whatever. But that's what we've got to think about before we can wrap up this 2024 garden year. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them. Anything else, guys? Well, thanks for coming, and good luck in your fall gardening pursuits. There's so many of them, things to do and enjoy. But just remember, take it easy. Don't make it a sprint. It's a marathon. And the older we get, the longer the marathon takes. So thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.